Let me also add to the welcome that's been extended this evening. We certainly do appreciate you being here. We are in the book of Exodus chapter 27. Exodus chapter 27. While you're turning there, let me remind you of a couple of things. First of all, appreciate the prayer, appreciate the song service. Both of them add a great deal to our worship to God. Appreciate Nick for mentioning the fact that Tuesday is a time to make your voice heard in this country. And as a citizen of God's kingdom and as a citizen of this kingdom, it's important for you to vote, especially in regards to issues that pertain to moral matters. Amendment 2, don't forget to turn over your ballot as you vote this week. Amendment 2 pertains to abortion. Now, if you are, you elders, help me make sure I say this right. If you are opposed to abortion, vote yes on Amendment 2. Is that correct? That is correct. If you want to see abortion hopefully one day be eradicated from our language and from the plight on society that it is, make your voice heard. And now, I may not vote for a lot of things, but on Tuesday, I will be voting on Amendment 2. Now, I think Amendment 1 pertains to the school system. You may want to ask one of these teachers which way you should vote on that. I don't really know. I have a son who's a teacher. I'll ask him later which way he wants me to vote. I don't even know what Amendment 3 and 4 are, but I think there are 4 amendments on that. So get out, do your civic duty as a good citizen in relationship to this country. Also, make emphasis in regards to the Lads to Leaders announcement that was made. Tim said especially, don't just put you need 2 nights on there. Is that Wednesday night and Thursday night, or is that Wednesday night and Saturday night? Do you want them to split it up? Be specific when you say, I want 2 nights. So if it's Thursday and Friday, or Friday and Saturday, or Saturday and whatever, just be sure and make sure that is known, and that will help them a great deal. And don't forget by the 18th to try to get all of that information back to them. All right, I think I've covered all my bases. Exodus chapter 27, beginning in verse 1. In chapter 27, we're going to deal with things pertaining to the tabernacle, things that pertain to the burnt offering and taking care of the items that were in and around the tabernacle. Chapter 28 of the book of Exodus, we're going to deal with the priesthood, their clothing, and their dress, and things of that nature. So starting in 27 and verse 1, you shall make an altar of acacia wood, 5 cubits long and 5 cubits wide. The altar shall be square, and its height shall be 3 cubits. The book of Exodus and the book of Leviticus in particular teach you something about adherence to God's law. It's important. God didn't say make this altar 5 cubits if you want to make it 5 cubits. 4.5 is close enough. 4, if you don't have the wood, all the acacia wood you need, just make it 4 foot long. These are not suggestions. And this is one of the things, one of the lessons that God is trying to teach us as you look at the book of Exodus and as you look at the book of Leviticus in particular. And you probably have asked yourself a million times, why do I need to know about the length of this altar and when they start putting the curtains up, and why does it have to be red and blue and purple, and why does it have to be so many pillars and so many bars, and what good does all that do me? It does one great lesson. It teaches you whether or not you're going to obey God to the letter of the law or not. And as children of God, we are to obey God explicitly. Verse 2, you shall make its horn on it 4 corners. Its horns shall be of one piece with it, and you shall overlay it with bronze. Also, you shall make its pans to receive its ashes, and its shovels, and its basins, and its forks, its fire pans. You shall make all its utensils of bronze. You shall make a grate for it, a network of bronze, and on the network you shall make 4 bronze rings at its 4 corners. And you shall put it under the rim of the altar beneath, that the network may be midway up the altar. And you shall make poles for the altar, poles of acacia wood, and overlay them with bronze. And the poles shall be put in the rings, and the poles shall be on the 2 sides of the altar to bear it. And you shall make it hollow with boards, as it was shown you in the mountain, so shall they make it. Again, why is that all important? You know, you might want to ask Uzzah if he learned the rule about how you're supposed to carry these utensils and these items that pertain to the tabernacle. He finds the Ark of the Covenant, and it's on that new cart, and it's come from the Philistines, and instead of putting the 2 poles through the 4 holes and carrying it like God said to carry it, he said, whew, you know, it sure would be a lot easier just let these oxen just walk this old thing on into Jerusalem. And the oxen shake. The the ark is about to fall, and what does he do? Reach up and touches it, and it kills him. How mean God is. No, you didn't pay attention. You didn't pay attention. Go out here and get to one of the Alabama Power substations. And they've got signs all over that thing. High voltage. Don't go in here. It'll kill you. This is a dangerous situation. Beware. Stay away. And we run up in there and throw our hand up in there and we get electrocuted. And somebody says, well, that's terrible. Alabama Power should have done something about it. They did. They told you don't do that. Well, God should have warned. God did. God did. Well, let's change things today. Instead of singing, let's let quartets sing for us. You better go back and find those poles, stick them through the rings, start carrying things the way God said carry them. Well, let's have women preachers. You better go back there and find you a pole and stick it through those rings and do what God said to do. And we could go on and on and on in relationship to it. Learn this lesson now is what God is saying to us. Starting in verse 9, here's the court of the tabernacle. You shall also make the court of the tabernacle. For the south sides there shall be a hanging for the court made of fine woven linen, 100 cubits long for one side. And its 20 pillars and their 20 sockets shall be bronze. The hooks of the pillars and their bands shall be silver. Now look there. God's just making it hard on us. Everything else has been bronze, and all of a sudden he says silver. Wouldn't it just be simpler if we just made everything bronze? Well, in the human reasoning, maybe it would be. But God said, this is the way I want it. And we don't have the right, we don't have the authority to change it. Likewise, along the length of the north side, there shall be hangings 100 cubits long, with its 20 pillars and their 20 sockets of bronze, and the hooks of the pillars and their bands of silvers. And along the width of the court on the west side shall be the hanging of 50 cubits, with their 10 pillars and their 10 sockets. And the width of the court on the east side shall be 50 cubits. The hanging on one side of the gate shall be 15, with their 3 pillars and their 3 sockets. And on the other side shall be the hanging of 15 cubits, with their 3 pillars and their 3 sockets. For the gate of the court there shall be a screen 20 cubits long, woven of blue, purple, and scarlet thread, and fine woven linen, made by a weaver. It shall have 4 pillars and 4 sockets, And all the pillars around the court shall have their bands of silver. Their hooks shall be of silver, and their sockets of bronze. The length of the court shall be 100 cubits, the width 50 throughout, the height 5 cubits, made of fine woven linen, and its sockets of bronze. All the utensils of the tabernacle for all its service, all its pegs, all the pegs of the court shall be of bronze. Now he's going to continue on, look at a different item in relationship to the tabernacle. This time it's the lampstand. Verse 20, and you shall command the children of Israel that they bring you pure oil of pressed olives for the light, to cause the lamp to burn continually in the tabernacle of meeting outside the veil, which is before the testimony. Aaron and his sons shall tend it from evening until morning before the Lord. It shall be a statute forever to their generation on behalf of the children of Israel. Now, you'd just have to have known my daddy to understand this statement. But he had 2 or 3 things he always said around the house. You leave the room and you leave the lights on, he'd say, why are you doing that? It's just wasting electricity. Turn the lights off when you go out of the room. And if you're ever standing there in front of the refrigerator, and no kids other than me have ever done this, I know. You stand there and you look, what I want to eat. And you stand there and you stand there. And if your mama or daddy was like mine, they'd finally come through and say, close the refrigerator door. What are you doing? Trying to cool the whole house by the refrigerator? That's nonsense. Quit that. Well, that's human reasoning. Can't you just hear the Israelites right here saying, now why do we need a fire continually? You only need a light during the night, don't you? We need lights now because they turn the lights out on us at 5 o'clock instead of letting the sun do what it's supposed to do. We need lights now. Why? Well, because you can't see in the dark, can't read in the dark, can't study in the dark. This is a symbol, number 1. And if you look at verse 21, it tells you what this is to remind the children of Israel about. We have memorials. We have eternal flames even in our country. And when you look at these, they're war memorials and things of that nature, and it's supposed to remind you of the great sacrifices that have been made for us. When they looked at this flame, it says it's to be a statue forever to their generations on behalf of the children of Israel. You're supposed to know God is with you. Now, when we turn the page, I come to chapter 28, book of Exodus, and we're now going to look at the priesthood. Beginning in verse 1, now take Aaron, your brother, and his sons with him, for among the children of Israel, that he may minister to me as priest, Aaron and Aaron's sons, Nadab, Abihu, Eleazar, and Ithamar. And you shall make holy garments for Aaron your brother, for glory and for beauty. So you shall speak to all who are gifted artisans, whom I have filled with the spirit of wisdom, that they may make Aaron's garments to consecrate him, that he may minister to me as a priest. And these are the garments which are made: a breastplate, an ephod, a robe, a skillfully woven tunic, a turban, and a sash. So they shall make holy garments for Aaron your brother and his son, that he may minister to me as priest. I was always taught, right, wrong, or indifferent. Let's mark this down as an opinion, first of all. So don't go out and just jump all over me and destroy me. But Mother and Daddy brought us up that when we're here to worship God, that we ought to be offering the very best that we can offer. And it starts with our clothing. And when you look at the priesthood, their garment was to stick out for a reason. And it wasn't that They were to stick out just so that they could be different. And when this eldership talks to this congregation, and it talks to the men and it talks to the women, and asks the women to dress appropriately and the men to dress appropriately, they're not asking you to do something that doesn't have some basis, biblical basis, principles that you can go back. I hear the argument right now, that's Old Testament, that don't apply to us today. Well, that's true to a certain extent. But before you start yelling that's the Old Testament, doesn't apply to you today, you might need to look at Romans 15 and verse 4. Whatsoever things were written aforetime were written for. For what? For our learning, that we through patience come from the Scriptures might have hope. Can I bind this on anybody? I don't know that I can bind any of these things on anybody. But when I look at it, I have to look at it from my heart and what I'm offering God. And am I giving God the very best that I can give Him? And when you're choosing garments to wear, I think that principle still applies to us today. In verse 5, he talks about the ephod. They shall take the gold and the blue and the purple and the scarlet thread and the fine linen, and they shall make the ephod of gold, blue, purple, and scarlet thread, and fine woven linen, artistically worked. It shall have 2 shoulder straps, joined at its 2 edges, and so it shall be joined together. And the intrical woven band of the ephod, which is on it, shall be of the same workmanship, made of gold, blue, purple, scarlet thread, and fine woven linen. Then you shall take 2 onyx stones and engrave on them the names of the sons of Israel, 6 of their names on one stone and 6 names on the other stone in order of their birth. With the work of an engraver in stone, like the engravings of a signet, you shall engrave 2 stones with the names of the sons of Israel. You shall set them in settings of gold. And you shall put the 2 stones on the shoulders of the ephod as memorial stones for the sons of Israel. So Aaron shall bear their names before the Lord on his 2 shoulders as a memorial. You shall also make settings of gold, and you shall make 2 chains of pure gold like braided cords, and fasten the braided chains to the setting. The purpose of this ephod, again, you look at verses 12 and 13, it's a memorial. And it's to represent the children of Israel. Then you start in verse 15 with the breastplate. And you shall make the breastplate of judgment, artistically woven according to the workmanship of the ephod. You shall make it of gold, blue, purple, scarlet thread, and fine woven linen. You shall make it. It shall be doubled into a square. A span shall be its length, and a span shall be its width. If you shall put settings of stone in it, 4 rows of stones. The first row shall be a sardius, a topaz, and an emerald shall be the first row. The second row shall be the turquoise, a sapphire, and a diamond. The third row, a jasmine, an agate, and an amethyst. And the fourth row, a beryl, an onyx, and jasper. They shall be set in gold settings. You might notice that I don't really buy Cindy a whole lot of these stones because I don't know how to say them. And it would be hard for me to go to the jeweler and say, I want one of those because I don't know what that is. But here are precious stones. I mean, the ones that I do recognize, the sapphires, the rubies, the diamonds, the things of that nature, they represent something of great value. And that's what they represent here on this breastplate. And the stones shall have the names of the sons of Israel, 12 according to their names, like the engravings of a signet, each one with its own name, shall be according to the 12 tribes. And you shall make chains for the breastplate at the end, like braided cords of pure gold. And you shall make 2 rings of gold for the breastplate, and put the 2 rings on the 2 ends of the breastplate. Then you shall put the 2 braided chains of gold in the 2 rings which are on the ends of the breastplate. And the other two ends of the two braided chains you shall fasten to the two settings and put them on the shoulder straps of the ephod in the front. You shall make 2 rings of gold and put them on the 2 ends of the breastplate on the edge of it, which is on the inner side of the ephod. And the 2 other rings of gold you shall make and put them on the 2 shoulder straps underneath the ephod according to its front, right at the seam above the intrical woven band of the ephod. And they shall bind the breastplate by means of its rings to the rings of the ephod using a blue cord, so that it is above the woven bands of the ephod, so that the breastplate does not come loose from the ephod. So Aaron shall bear the names of the sons of Israel on the breastplates of judgment over his heart, when he goes into the holy place as a memorial before the Lord continually. And you shall put on the breastplate of the judgment the Urim and the Thummim, and they shall be over Aaron's heart when he goes in before the Lord. So Aaron shall bear the judgment of the children of Israel over his heart before the Lord continually. Again, representation of the entire tribe of Israel being placed close to Moses' heart, and it's supposed to represent going to the heart of God and being placed in front of as a memorial in relationship to these things. Then beginning in verse 31, other priestly garments. You shall make the robe of the ephod all of blue, and there shall be an opening for his head in the middle of it. It shall have a woven binding all around its opening, like the opening in a coat of mail, so that it does not tear. And upon its hem you shall make pomegranate of blue, purple, and scarlet, all around its hem, and bells of gold between them all around. A gold bell and a pomegranate, a golden bell and a pomegranate upon the hem of the robe all around. And it shall be upon Aaron when he ministers, and its sounds will be heard when he goes into the holy place before the Lord, and when he comes out, that he may not die. And you shall also make a plate of pure gold, and engraving on it like the engraving of the signet, holiness to the Lord. And you shall put it on a blue cord, that it may be on the turban. It shall be in the front of the turban. So it shall be on Aaron's forehead, that Aaron may bear the iniquity of the holy things which the children of Israel hallow in their holy gifts. And it shall be on his forehead, and that they may be acceptable before the Lord. And you shall skillfully weave the tunic of fine linen thread, and you shall make the turban of fine linen, and you shall make the sash of woven work. For Aaron's sons you shall make tunics, and you shall make sashes for them, and you shall make hats for them for glory and beauty. So you shall put them on Aaron your brother, and on his sons with him. You shall anoint them, consecrate them, and sanctify them, and they may minister to me as the priest. And you shall make for them linen trousers. I believe the King James Version says linen breeches, to cover their nakedness. They shall reach from the waist to the thighs. You know, a lot of times you get asked a question about a pair of shorts. What do you consider modest? If anybody asks me that question, I'll turn to Exodus 28 and verse 42. You read it. Now, the purpose of these breeches was to cover up their nakedness. And sometimes today, we tend to think that items that are much shorter than that, when the breeches legs are about that long, that's long enough. That's an embarrassment. That's what that is. For them linen trousers to cover their nakedness, they shall reach from the waist to the thighs. And they shall be on Aaron and on his sons when they come into the tabernacle of the meeting, or when they come near the altar to minister in the holy place. that they do not incur iniquity and die. You need to underline that phrase, every one of you. Now, here's the point of what he's trying to tell us, that you do not incur this iniquity and die. Don't be guilty of setting aside the Word of God and say, I'm going to do it the way I want to. Don't seek means to justify what you say, act, or do, what you wear, where you go. Don't seek to please yourself, 1 John 2 and verse 15, and to simply put the Word of God aside. Because if you do, then you are running the same risk that the Israelites ran. If you allow these iniquities to be in your life, you may not die physically because of the iniquity, but spiritually you will die. And spiritual death is much worse than physical death. It shall be a statute forever to him and his descendants after him. That is Exodus 27 and 28. Again, let me emphasize that what's being stressed in these chapters are God's laws. I don't think that on the day of judgment when you meet the Lord, and I might be wrong, but I don't think He's going to give you a quiz like these young folks are going to take here in a few weeks for lads to leaders, and want to know how many pillars and bars were on the right side of the door and how many pillars and bars were on the left side of the door. And what was the full length of the pillars and bars on the north side and on the south side, and what were all the pillars and bars and how many were involved in the west side and the east side. Can y'all answer those questions? No, they can't. Their eyes went like this right now. Well, how many of us could answer that question? My point is a simple point. And I don't know that God is going to require us to know every pillar and bar. But He does expect and demand us to respect and obey His word. Is that true? Every bit that applies to us, we need to honor. I leave that message with you this evening. Do you honor the word, the law of God? If you're here and never been obedient to the gospel of Jesus Christ, can you find in the Bible what you have done to become a Christian? Do you need to know what the Bible says? Hear, believe, repent, confess, and be baptized. And I can prove it with scriptures on each and every one of them. If you've done these things, but are you continuing to walk faithfully? Or have we gotten off track and are no longer allowing God to direct our lives? We have discarded His word and we're now doing what we want to do. If you need to change your life in any way, now's an excellent time to do so. We encourage you to come as we stand and sing.